On Christmas Day, my husband brought his pregnant mistress to our home and humiliated me for being infertile, claiming I couldn't give him children. I just gave him a tight, ironic smile and said, "But Desmond, have you checked the news?" When he looked at the television, he went pale as the breaking story was about his own corruption. The house was dressed perfectly for the holiday. Warm Christmas lights glowed. The aroma of a freshly roasted turkey filled the air, and the dining table was meticulously set. Aisha Everett had spent the entire day preparing a perfect dinner for her husband, Desmond Hayes. Every single detail reflected her dedication. As she adjusted the red bow on a napkin, a thought crossed her mind. Maybe today we can finally find a little peace. The doorbell rang. Aisha hurried to the door with a smile that hid her exhaustion. When she opened it, her heart sank. Desmond was there, but he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was Vanessa Jenkins, a young woman in an expensive coat with a very noticeably rounded belly. "What is the meaning of this?" Aisha asked, her voice trembling, but thick with disbelief. Desmond simply pushed the door open without looking at her. Vanessa walked in behind him with a cold smirk. "It means it's about time you knew the truth," Desmond announced, calmly taking off his coat, as if he were arriving at his own surprise party. Aisha followed him into the living room, feeling tension coil in every muscle of her body. "The truth?" Aisha insisted, trying to keep her composure. Her gaze settled on Vanessa, who was stroking her belly in a theatrical gesture. "This is Vanessa," Desmond declared, as if introducing a childhood friend. "She's going to have my child. Something you were never capable of giving me." The phrase hit Aisha like a punch to the gut. She felt the air rush out of her, but she refused to collapse, not in front of them. "Your child?" she repeated, more to buy time than to seek an answer. Her mind struggled to process what was happening. Desmond dropped onto the sofa with an arrogance that swelled to fill the entire room. "Does this surprise you? After all these years, it was logical that I would seek out what you could never offer me. Vanessa is complete. You, on the other hand, are like a vacant property, beautiful on the outside, but with nothing to offer inside." The silence that followed was suffocating. Aisha felt her hands shaking, but hid them behind her back. She couldn't let them see how much those words hurt. "And you think this is something to celebrate on Christmas?" she finally asked, her voice firmer than she expected. Vanessa, who had been silent until now, chimed in. "Desmond asked me to come. He wants us to learn to live together. After all, you don't really have anywhere else to go." Aisha turned to Desmond, incredulous. "Live together? What in the world are you saying?" Desmond stood up slowly, approaching her with that condescending look that always made her feel small. "Don't play the victim. I've carried the weight of your emptiness for years. It's not my fault if you can't fulfill something as basic as giving me a child. Stop being a burden." Tears threatened to spill, but Aisha held them back with all her strength. She refused to let this man see how much he was destroying her. "You are despicable," she murmured, her words sharp as broken glass. Desmond let out a dry, short laugh. "Despicable or not, this is reality. If you want to keep being part of this house, you'll have to accept things as they are." Aisha felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but something stopped her. It was then that an unexpected sound interrupted the moment. The television, which had been left on in the background, began broadcasting a breaking news alert. Desmond, who had seemed invulnerable until that moment, went ghostly pale. His attention snapped to the screen. Aisha, confused, looked too, though her vision was blurred by tears. "It can't be," Desmond muttered, stepping toward the television, his eyes glued to the image. Vanessa nervously moved closer to him. "What is it? What's going on?" Aisha watched them, noticing how Desmond's arrogance was crumbling. Whatever he was seeing had shaken him to his core. Despite her confusion, she felt a small spark of curiosity. Whatever it was, it had reduced him to the fragile man he never admitted to being. Without saying another word, Desmond quickly shut off the television. "Let's go," he ordered, completely ignoring Aisha. "What? But—" Vanessa tried to protest, but Desmond was already grabbing his coat. Aisha remained still, watching as her husband and his mistress headed for the door. Before stepping out, Desmond turned back one last time. "This isn't over." When the door closed behind them, silence flooded the house. Aisha finally allowed the tears to fall, but not for long. A spark of determination began to burn inside her. That night, amidst the wreckage of her ruined Christmas, she swore she would never be humiliated like this again. The cold morning air drifted through the windows Aisha had forgotten to close. The house, which had been full of warm lights and Christmas decorations hours ago, now felt hollow, as if Desmond's betrayal had ripped out any trace of joy. Aisha remained sitting on the sofa, unable to move, her eyes swollen from the tears she'd stopped wiping away. Suddenly, a dull thud jolted her out of her trance. The wall clock had slipped and fallen to the floor without warning, shattering into pieces. Aisha stared at it, unable to avoid thinking about how symbolic the moment was. Her life, like the clock, was in fragments. A sound from her phone drew her attention. A message. "I hope you reconsider because I don't have time for your drama," Desmond wrote, with that arrogance she hated so much. Aisha clenched her teeth. How dare he treat her this way after what he'd done? She wanted to reply, to tell him everything she thought, but her finger stopped before hitting send. He didn't deserve another word from her. The next message was worse. A picture popped up on her screen. It was Vanessa lying in the master bed Aisha had shared with Desmond. The photograph was captioned with a text, "Your time in this house is over. It's mine now." That was the moment something inside Aisha snapped. Her legs trembled as she stood, the phone still in her hand. She took a step toward the bedroom, but her body couldn't handle any more. A sharp pain shot through her chest. Aisha collapsed to the floor, feeling the world grow darker with every second. The wail of the ambulance siren broke the night's stillness. Aisha was barely conscious of what was happening as the paramedics loaded her onto a stretcher. Her neighbor, who had heard the thud when Aisha collapsed, had called 911. "Does she have family we can notify?" one of the paramedics asked with concern. Aisha tried to speak, to tell them there was no one. Her husband was too preoccupied with his mistress, and her mother lived too far away. But the words wouldn't come out. She closed her eyes and let the darkness envelop her. When she woke up, the hospital's white lights blinded her. A nurse was checking her vitals. "You had a severe anxiety attack," she explained, noticing Aisha was awake. "Your body just couldn't handle all that stress." The nurse's words echoed in her mind. Your body just couldn't handle all that stress. All thanks to Desmond. Hours later, released from the hospital, Aisha walked out, not knowing where to go. Her house was no longer a home, and she couldn't bear the thought of facing Desmond and Vanessa again. She walked the empty streets, the cold biting at her skin. At some point, her instinct led her to take a bus toward the town where her mother lived. When she arrived at the door of the small house in Greensboro, North Carolina, the sun was barely beginning to rise. She knocked hard, desperate for refuge. Brenda Everett opened the door quickly, and seeing her daughter's state, embraced her without a word. "What did they do to you?" Brenda asked, her voice heavy with pain. Aisha tried to answer, but tears interrupted her. Everything spilled out. The humiliation, Desmond's cruel words, Vanessa's presence, and how she had ended up in the hospital. Brenda listened, stroking her hair as she had when Aisha was a child. "That man isn't worth a thing," Brenda finally said firmly. "But you, daughter? You are not what he says you are. He's lost someone valuable, and I promise you, he'll regret it." "I feel like I'm worth nothing," Aisha murmured, burying her face in her mother's shoulder. Brenda took her face in her hands and forced her to look up. "Never say that again. Never. He made you believe that lie, but don't let him anymore. This is your chance to show him you don't need him." Aisha didn't respond, but something in her mother's words lit a small spark inside her. She knew the road would be long, but in that moment, she decided she wouldn't let Desmond destroy her. The day passed with conversations and comfortable silences at Brenda's house. In the afternoon, Aisha went for a walk through the small town, seeking to clear her mind. It was then that she saw a sign that caught her attention. Auditions for the local community theater group. Discover your passion on stage. Aisha couldn't help but smile. She had been an actress in her youth before marrying Desmond, but she gave it all up to dedicate her life to him. Theater belonged to her past, but something in that sign invited her to try. Could she find a piece of herself in that place? The thought lingered, and for the first time since that night, Aisha felt that maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the darkness Desmond had left in her life. Back at home, she received a message. It was from Desmond. I hope you are reflecting on what happened. I don't want trouble when you come back. Vanessa is here to stay, and you only have two options: accept it or leave forever. Aisha looked at the message, and for the first time, she didn't feel the crushing weight of Desmond's words. He had shown the worst of himself, but she was determined to show the best of herself. For the first time in a long time, she smiled, a small smile, but charged with something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Aisha woke up early that morning, driven by a feeling she barely recognized: defiance. Desmond's words still echoed in her mind, but not with the crushing weight of before. Now they were fuel, a reminder of everything he thought she couldn't achieve. She walked toward the local theater with a mix of nerves and determination, ready to face the challenge that would change the course of her life. The theater was small, with scuffed walls and a half-hung sign, but it had a welcoming air that calmed her. On the stage, a group of people were rehearsing a scene. In the center of the room, a tall man with an intense gaze watched attentively. It was Caleb Stone, the group's director. "Looking for something?" Caleb asked without taking his eyes off the actors. His tone was direct, as if he didn't have time for small talk. Aisha cleared her throat and stepped forward. "I saw the audition sign." "I'd like to participate." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "What do you have to offer?" "A passion I gave up a long time ago. I want to get it back," Aisha replied. Caleb let out a short, unconvinced laugh. "They all say that. Get up on stage. Let's see what you've got." Aisha's first audition was a disaster. Her voice trembled, her movements were clumsy, and to make matters worse, she forgot part of the dialogue. The other actors murmured among themselves, and Caleb let out an audible sigh. "This isn't a game," Caleb said, crossing his arms. "If you're here expecting us to applaud you for trying, you're in the wrong place." Aisha clenched her fists, feeling the stares burn her, but instead of backing down, she took a step forward. "Give me another chance." Caleb shook his head, surprised by her insistence. "I don't usually give second chances." "Then make an exception," she replied, her voice firmer than she felt. The laughs of some actors hit her, but she stood her ground. Caleb watched her for a long moment before gesturing toward the stage. 5 minutes. Aisha's second attempt wasn't perfect, but it was enough for Caleb to see something in her. A spark, a potential buried under years of self-doubt and humiliation. When she finished, Caleb nodded slowly. "All right, you can stay, but prepare to work twice as hard as everyone else. This isn't charity." Aisha nodded, feeling a mix of relief and excitement fill her chest. For the first time in years, she felt she was reclaiming a part of herself. The following weeks were hell disguised as rehearsals. Caleb had zero patience for mistakes and didn't hesitate to point out Aisha's every flaw with harsh words. "Is that the best you can do?" he yelled one day when she missed a line during a run-through. The laughter of the other actors filled the theater, but Aisha bit her tongue and pushed on. Every night she arrived home exhausted, her body aching, her mind full of doubt. But when she looked in the mirror, she saw something different, a strength that wasn't there before. One night, while she practiced her monologue in front of a mirror, a message arrived from Desmond. "I hope you finally understood that without me, you are nothing. Aisha squeezed the phone tight, but didn't respond. Instead, she recited her monologue with more passion than ever, imagining Desmond's face in front of her. In that moment, she knew she wasn't just acting, she was fighting. When opening night arrived, Aisha was ready. She had spent months perfecting every line, every movement. She knew this was her chance, not just to shine, but to prove to Desmond and to herself that she was far more than he had tried to make her believe. The small theater was packed that evening. Aisha took a deep breath behind the curtain, feeling the weight of anticipation in every fiber of her being. Just before walking out onto the stage, she saw something that stopped her. Desmond was in the audience, his expression a mix of mockery and curiosity. "Ready?" Caleb asked, noticing her tension. Aisha nodded. She wasn't going to let Desmond steal this moment from her. When the lights came up and the stage filled with life, Aisha transformed. Every word she spoke resonated in the theater. Every movement captivated the audience's attention. Her performance was a blend of vulnerability and strength that left the audience breathless. Desmond watched her, eyes wide, unable to believe what he was seeing. This wasn't the disaster he'd left behind. This was a strong, powerful woman who made him feel small from his seat. When the play finished, the theater erupted in applause. Aisha stood on the stage, looking out at the audience with her head held high. In that moment, her eyes met Desmond's. Without saying a word, she gave him a smile, not a smile of gratitude, but one that clearly said, "Look at what I am without you." That night, as she walked back to her mother's home, Aisha felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: pride. She had faced her fears, endured the humiliations, and proven that she was far stronger than Desmond or anyone else had imagined. And this was only the beginning. Hours later, Desmond paced nervously in the living room of the house he once shared with Aisha. The echo of the words she had given him after the play still bounced in his head. He had never seen her like that. Strong, self-assured, capable of looking at him as if she didn't fear him in the slightest. That look of contempt had burned him inside. But now, he had problems much more serious than his wounded ego. The television was on, and a news anchor was discussing the recent FBI investigation into a corruption scheme involving several prominent businessmen. Desmond shut off the screen with a groan. He didn't need any more reminders. The shadow of his bad decisions was catching up to him, and he had no way to escape. A sound at the door broke his thoughts. It was Aisha. He looked at her, surprised. She never came back. "What are you doing here?" Desmond asked, trying to hide his discomfort. Aisha didn't answer immediately. She walked into the house with firm steps, without asking permission, and closed the door behind her. Her cold gaze made Desmond feel small. "I came because I need you to listen to something," she said, dropping her purse onto the table with a dry thud. "I don't want you to think you can keep playing games with me." Desmond tried to regain his usual arrogance. "Oh, yeah? And what am I supposed to hear?" Aisha looked him straight in the eye. Her tone was firm, but held a contained fury that disarmed him. "I lived in this house with you for years. I gave up my dreams, I gave up my life, because you said we were a team. And when things didn't work out the way you expected, because I couldn't give you children, you decided to bring another woman into my house. And not only that, you had the nerve to tell me to stay and share this space with her, as if I meant nothing." Desmond tried to interrupt her, but Aisha raised a hand. "Silence. Don't you dare speak. You treated me like trash. You humiliated me. You called me empty. And you expected me to just accept it. But I'm going to tell you something, Desmond. I respect myself. Because if I don't, I see that no one else will do it for me." Desmond gritted his teeth, but he couldn't help but feel cornered by Aisha's words. She wasn't finished. "You, on the other hand, don't have an ounce of dignity. You are a man so weak that instead of facing your problems, you hid behind another woman. And now look at you, ruined, with all the trouble you brought on yourself. Because, Desmond, you pay the price for doing wrong." The mention of his financial problems made Desmond defensive. "What do you know about my problems?" he spat, trying to regain some control. Aisha let out a bitter laugh. I know enough. I know that the corruption they were talking about on the news has you up to your neck. I know that those shady deals you played with to feel powerful are now dragging you down. I know that Vanessa left because she couldn't handle the pressure. And you know what? I'm glad. Because everything you're going through, you earned. Desmond pounded the table with his fist. You don't know anything. Everything I did was to maintain this house, to give us a better life. If things went wrong, it's not my fault. Aisha crossed her arms, maintaining her posture. Are you really still lying to yourself? You didn't do anything for us. Everything you did was to feed your ego, to feel bigger than you are. But look where you are now. You lost everything. Desmond slumped into a chair, defeated. For the first time in a long time, he had no words to defend himself. Aisha looked at him with a mix of pity and contempt. I'll tell you something, Desmond. I could have helped you. I could have supported you, as I did for years. But you taught me that I meant nothing to you, so now you mean nothing to me either. Desmond lifted his head, his eyes full of anger. You came here just to humiliate me, to make yourself feel better? Aisha shook her head. No, I came to make it clear that I will not allow you to continue thinking you can control me and to make you understand something. You are no longer part of my life. You have no power over me anymore. With those words, Aisha picked up her purse and walked toward the door. Before stepping out, she turned one last time. I hope you find a way to fix your problems, Desmond. But this time, you'll do it alone. And with that, she left Desmond sitting in the living room, surrounded by silence and the shadows of his own ruinous decisions. Days later, Aisha looked at her reflection in the dressing room mirror. Her face showed determination, confidence, and something more, a happiness she had forgotten could exist. She had just finished an interview for a major national program discussing her meteoric rise in the theater. Since her stunning performance in the small Greensboro theater, the media hadn't stopped talking about her. Every play she was in was a success, and her name was starting to resonate in the most prestigious circles in Atlanta. Headlines kept surprising her. The actress who left her past behind to shine. Aisha. Talent born from the ashes. Even entertainment shows began to inquire about her personal life, mentioning her ex-husband Desmond with a speculative tone. As she gathered her things, her phone vibrated on the table. It was a message from Desmond. Geisha. I need to see you. It's urgent. Please forgive me. I made mistakes, but I'm paying for them. Aisha let out a deep sigh. This wasn't the first time Desmond had tried to contact her. Over the past few weeks, his messages had become increasingly insistent, even desperate. Aisha knew his life was falling apart, but she felt no obligation to help him. She closed her purse and walked out of the dressing room, leaving the message unanswered. The downtown Atlanta theater where she was performing that night was packed. The audience's applause at the end of the show was deafening. Aisha walked off stage, and amidst the crowd waiting to greet her, she saw a figure she hadn't expected. It was Desmond. He approached with nervous steps, his eyes red from crying. Aisha, I need to talk to you. Please. She crossed her arms, maintaining her firm posture. What do you want, Desmond? I want you to listen to me, just for a moment. I beg you. The intensity of his voice and the fact that he was doing this in public forced her to agree. They moved to a corner of the theater where no one could overhear them. Desmond started talking immediately, his words jumbled. I ruined everything. The business spun out of control. The authorities are after me. I could go to jail. I lost everything. Aisha, I don't have anyone else. I need your help. Aisha looked at him, feeling a mix of pity and satisfaction. This was the man who had humiliated her, who had trampled on her dignity without a second thought. Now he was standing in front of her, begging her, as if she were his only salvation. And why should I help you? She asked, with a calmness that contrasted with Desmond's desperation. because I know you still have a good heart. We all make mistakes, Aisha. I was an idiot, a jerk. I didn't know how to value what I had. I failed you, and I regret it. But this is serious. If you don't help me, I don't know what's going to happen to me." Aisha watched him closely. The tears in his eyes were real, but so was his selfishness. He wasn't there because he loved her or because he was truly sorry. He was there because he needed her, because he had hit rock bottom and had no one else. "Do you know what the most ironic thing about all this is, Desmond?" she finally said, breaking the silence. "When we were together, you always made me feel like I was the problem, like I was the one who was worthless. But look where we are now. I'm here at the best moment of my life, and you are ruined, and all because of your own decisions." Desmond held his hands to his head, desperate. I know. But we all deserve a second chance. I'm asking for your forgiveness, Aisha. Please. If what we had ever meant anything, help me." She let out a bitter laugh. "A second chance? Like the one you gave me when you brought that woman into our home? Like the one you gave me when you called me empty? No, Desmond. This isn't about second chances. This is about taking responsibility for your actions." Desmond fell to his knees in front of her, completely ignoring the people passing nearby. He was a destroyed man, but Aisha felt no compassion. She had reached where she was despite everything he had done to her, and she wasn't going to turn back. "Please, Aisha. I just want to get out of this mess. I can't go to jail." Aisha looked down at him as if seeing him for the first time. "I can't save you, Desmond. I don't even know if I want to. Because if you think about it, this is exactly what you deserve." Desmond looked up at her, his face full of anguish, but she didn't move. "I hope you learned something from this, but it will be without me. I am not your savior, Desmond. I never was." And with those words, she turned and left him there, kneeling on the floor amidst the noise of a theater celebrating her success. That night, as Aisha looked out at the lights of Atlanta from her hotel window, she felt a peace she had never known before. She had faced the man who almost destroyed her and had emerged victorious. Her life was hers, and nothing and no one would ever take it away from her again. The sun illuminated the elegant hotel suite where Aisha was temporarily staying. The day's schedule was packed. Interviews, photo shoots, meetings with producers. Far from feeling overwhelmed, Aisha enjoyed every moment. She had fought too hard to reach this point and wasn't going to take anything for granted. On the table in front of her, a pile of contracts awaited her signature. Each one represented a new opportunity. A role in an international film, an invitation to star in a play on a famous Broadway stage, and even an endorsement deal that cemented her as a public figure. Everything seemed to go beyond what she had ever imagined. Aisha took a break and stepped onto the balcony. From there, she could see the city spread out before her as if it belonged to her. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill her lungs. It was an absolute contrast to the cold, lonely nights she had spent crying in her mother's house. Now, every tear felt like a distant memory. "Thank you, God, for all the good things you have given me," she said softly, with her eyes closed and her hands resting on the railing. She had learned to value every blessing. Life, though cruel at times, had given her the chance to be reborn, to prove not only to others but to herself that she was capable of anything she set her mind to. That afternoon, Aisha was on a television set recording an interview for a primetime show. The host greeted her with a warm smile. "Aisha, you've had an incredible ascent. Everyone is talking about you. Tell us, how did you do it?" She smiled, adjusting her posture on the couch. "It's a combination of hard work, faith, and surrounding myself with people who truly believe in me. I went through very difficult times, but I think that made me stronger. I learned not to give up, and here I am." The host nodded, impressed. "Many say your performances have a special intensity, as if they carry a very personal, emotional weight. Is that true?" Aisha took a moment to answer, remembering everything she had lived through. "Every role I play has a part of me in it. I believe my story has taught me to connect with human emotions, and that's something I try to reflect in my work. Emotions are universal, and I feel honored to be able to share them with the audience." The studio audience applauded, and Aisha felt a warm satisfaction. She had found her place in the world. That night, while reviewing more proposals in her hotel, she received an unexpected call. It was Brenda, her mother. "Daughter, you have to hear this," Brenda said, her voice emotional. Aisha smiled. She had been talking to her mother every day since things started to look up. "What is it, Mom?" "Mrs. Elena called me. Do you remember her?" "Well, she told me that the other day she saw a television program where they talked about you, and she couldn't believe how far you've come. She told me she admired you so much and that she always knew you had something special." Aisha laughed fondly. "Mrs. Elena was always one of my biggest critics." "It's good to know she thinks differently now." Brenda sighed on the other end of the line. "Daughter, I'm so proud of you. You've proven that you're stronger than anyone imagined, even stronger than you thought yourself." Her mother's words deeply moved her. For a moment, she couldn't speak. She had fought so hard, fallen so many times, but hearing her mother say that made it all worthwhile. "Thank you, Mom, for never stopping believing in me." Controversy struck when, the next day, a major news outlet published an article linking Desmond to the corruption case that was being investigated. Aisha couldn't help but read it, even though she knew she should stay away from that kind of news. The article detailed how Desmond had manipulated contracts, bribed officials, and illegally used funds to finance his lifestyle. It also mentioned that several of his former partners had abandoned him, leaving Desmond to face the consequences alone. Aisha closed the magazine and put it aside. She couldn't deny feeling some satisfaction knowing that life was finally delivering justice. But she also knew she couldn't stay trapped in the past. Desmond was no longer part of her story. Her success didn't depend on his downfall, but on her own determination and hard work. That night at a gala dinner, Aisha was honored with an award for Artistic Revelation of the Year. As she walked onto the stage to receive it, her mind returned to everything she had lived through. She lifted the trophy and dedicated a few words to the audience. "This recognition means so much to me, but I want to dedicate it to everyone who has ever doubted themselves. It's never too late to start over, to find your voice, and to show the world what you are made of. Thank you for believing in me." The applause was deafening. Aisha stayed on stage for a moment, looking out at the crowd. She knew there was still much to do, but in that instant everything seemed possible. She had come so far, and she had no intention of stopping. Weeks later, Aisha was in the dressing room of a vibrant theater. Outside, thousands of people awaited her performance in what would be one of the most important nights of her career. The same woman who had been humiliated, underestimated, and abandoned was now a rising star whom everyone admired. As she looked in the mirror, her phone vibrated on the table. The message was from an unknown number. Reading it, her heart stopped for an instant. It was Vanessa. "Aisha, I need to talk to you. I don't know who else to turn to, please. It's about my daughter." Surprise flooded her, but so did curiosity. She knew Vanessa and Desmond were facing serious charges for corruption. The news had been full of details about the arrests and their ongoing trial. Aisha took a deep breath and replied to the message, asking to meet the next day. In a cold prison visiting room, Aisha saw Vanessa for the first time in months. Her appearance had changed. The arrogant, self-assured woman now looked haggard, with a gaze that reflected despair. In her arms, she held a baby barely a few months old. "Thank you for coming," Vanessa said, her voice broken. Aisha took a seat opposite her, watching her with a mixture of compassion and caution. "What is it you want?" Aisha asked directly. Vanessa looked down at the baby, gently stroking her face. "This is Morgan, my daughter and Desmond's daughter. I don't know how much longer I'll be here. My lawyers say I'll likely spend years in prison. I don't want my daughter to grow up without a mother. She's not to blame for any of this." Aisha felt a knot in her stomach. The child was innocent, and her small face radiated a purity that deeply moved her. "Why are you telling me this?" Aisha asked, trying to stay calm. Vanessa looked up, tears running down her cheeks. "Because you're the only person I know who has a good heart. You know what pain is, but you also know how to bounce back. I want you to take care of Morgan. I know Desmond can't, and I won't be able to either. Please, Aisha, do this for her." The request left Aisha speechless. She had never imagined finding herself in a situation like this. Her mind filled with questions and doubts, but something inside her told her she couldn't ignore this child. "Are you sure about this?" she finally asked. Vanessa nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, it's the best thing for her. Please, Aisha." I have no one else. Aisha agreed to take Morgan in, though she knew it was a life-changing decision. She hired a trusted nanny, ensuring the baby was well cared for while she continued with her busy schedule. With each passing day, Aisha grew more fond of Morgan. The little girl had arrived in her life at an unexpected time. But with every smile and every laugh, Aisha felt her heart filling with a love she had never experienced. Meanwhile, her relationship with Caleb Stone blossomed. They had spent months getting to know each other, supporting each other in their respective careers. He admired Aisha's sensitivity, and she saw him as a constant inspiration. One night after a show, Caleb invited her to dinner. In the middle of the conversation, Aisha decided to be honest with him. "Caleb, there's something I need to tell you. A few weeks ago, I adopted Morgan, Desmond, and Vanessa's daughter. I know it's complicated, but I couldn't leave her on her own." Caleb took her hand, looking at her tenderly. "That only confirms what I've always known about you, Aisha. You are an incredible woman with a huge heart. Morgan is lucky to have you." Aisha felt her eyes well up with tears. She had feared Caleb would pull away, but instead, his understanding made her feel closer to him. Over time, Morgan became a central part of Aisha's life. She brought her to all her shows and rehearsals with the help of her nanny. The public began to notice the little one and adored her as much as her adoptive mother. Morgan was a constant reminder that even in the worst circumstances, beautiful things could emerge. One night, while Aisha was home with Morgan, Caleb arrived with a smile. "I have something to tell you," he said, sitting down next to her. "What is it?" Aisha asked, curious. "I want us to keep building what we have, but at our own pace. When you're ready, when we're sure, I'd like to build a home with you and Morgan." Aisha looked at him, feeling her heart pound. "I want that too, Caleb, but I want to do it right when we are both ready." They hugged, with Morgan playing near them. Aisha couldn't help but look up at the ceiling, grateful. "Thank you, God, for everything good you've given me." After the storm, the calm always comes. The future was full of possibilities, and Aisha was ready to face them with love, strength, and hope. Aisha's backyard was decorated with colorful balloons and streamers that danced in the breeze. The tables were covered with sweets, cakes, and a large cake with Morgan's name written in gold letters. It was a special day. Morgan was turning 1, and Aisha wanted to celebrate it with all the love her little daughter deserved. Children ran across the lawn, playing, while the adults chatted animatedly. Morgan, dressed in a little pink dress covered in flowers, sat in her high chair, observing everything with curiosity. Aisha approached with a smile, adjusting the bow in her hair. "Happy birthday, my princess," she said, giving her a kiss on the forehead. Caleb appeared behind her, carrying a large box wrapped in shiny gift paper. "Ready to open your main present?" he asked, looking at Aisha and Morgan with excitement. Aisha nodded, lifting Morgan out of her chair so she could see up close. "I wonder what it is," Aisha said playfully as Caleb placed the box in front of them. With a little help, Morgan tugged at the ribbon, and the box slowly opened. A small puppy with floppy ears and bright eyes came bounding out, barking excitedly. The children around them screamed with delight. "It's a doggie!" one of them exclaimed. Morgan let out a lovely giggle, reaching out her small hands toward the puppy. Aisha laughed as she picked it up. "He's perfect," she said, stroking the puppy as it wagged its tail vigorously. "What should we name him?" Caleb smiled, kneeling beside them. "I was thinking Goofy. He looks like a goofy, don't you think?" Aisha looked at the puppy, who at that moment licked Morgan's cheek, causing the little one to giggle even more. "Yes, Goofy is perfect." Morgan clapped as if she understood what was happening, and Aisha couldn't help but feel that her heart was completely full. Caleb stood up and took Aisha's hand. "I can't believe a year has passed since Morgan came into your life," he said, looking at her tenderly. "You've been incredible." "She's lucky to have you as a mother, and we're lucky to have you," Aisha replied, gently squeezing his hand. "We're a good team, aren't we?" Caleb nodded, smiling as Morgan continued to play with Goofy on the lawn. The party continued with laughter, games, and songs. When the sun began to set, the backyard was illuminated by the soft lights of the string lights. Aisha gathered the guests in the center of the lawn, where there was a basket filled with colorful balloons. "I want us to do something special to close out this beautiful day," she said, holding a balloon in her hand. "These balloons are a symbol of good wishes for Morgan. Each of us will put our dreams for her life into them." Everyone took a balloon, including Caleb, who helped Morgan hold hers. Aisha watched them, feeling that she couldn't ask for anything more in life. "Ready?" she asked, looking at the guests. "Ready!" Everyone responded in unison. Aisha, Caleb, and Morgan together released their balloons at the same time, watching as they soared into the sky, carrying with them wishes of love, happiness, and hope. Goofy ran through the yard, barking excitedly as he chased the receding balloons. Caleb hugged Aisha and Morgan, and the three of them stood there, watching the balloons disappear into the sky. The love that surrounded them was palpable, and the sound of Goofy playing around them completed the scene of perfect happiness. "Thank you, God, for this day and for everything you've given us," Aisha said softly as Caleb held her tighter. It was a perfect moment, full of love, laughter, and the promise of a brilliant future. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.